Good late Thursday, early Friday. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center right now, giving a look at the temperatures across the region. You do see here some freezing and below freezing numbers as we're looking at things around 1 o'clock in the morning, and we're going to see some further drops here. So, have a freeze warning in play for much of the area here. I know sometimes, as we're looking like Tallahassee, they've had so many, they're not issuing them here as we're looking for their counties, but the Jacksonville area is, and most of the regions under it here tonight. Not everybody if you're getting right there in some of the coastal eastern county zones in North Florida. But we have a lot of folks under this. This isn't a hard freeze for most of us tonight. Granted, a rural area or two, I guess you can't quite rule out getting just there for a bit, but we are at 29 here east of Star. That's why I say that. So most of everybody else, so you see, we have these readings here toward those 30s. Everybody else, in fact. We have 30 there toward Live Oak, 30 there toward Dixie County around Cross City. So that kind of tells that story. You see, even in Central Florida, it's pretty cool, pretty cold. I mean, this isn't, something where, you look at that area down there, and we've had just so much cold weather lately. This isn't, the worst they've had, but in general, that's still very cold for them, low 40s at this time of night. And, we're going to have some colder air even as we get throughout the rest of the night here coming at least a little bit as we're looking, the temperature drop just a bit more. So something to keep in mind as we're seeing things. And we have a drought concern that is very significant, though, across the area. We have a wildfire threat that is growing in general here. We had a little bit of rain, especially toward the east. It just wasn't enough. In the western areas, we had a little bit more toward Tallahassee, but towards like Stark, Gainesville, Jacksonville, we're talking about a tenth of an inch or so, and that's not near enough. Now, the drought indexes here, the updates coming in, don't factor in the recent rain we had because they did the calculations on Tuesday, but it wouldn't have helped much anyway. I'll say that here pretty soon. We just have very dry air in here. These freezes aren't helping. Just got to be really careful, really vigilant here with all these concerns that we're looking at with the wildfire dangers around, because we just have just a lot of vulnerable areas here. Just one spark can really be a big problem here as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. So I know you see the temperatures right now. We again had a little bit of rain there as we were looking back on that Thursday, early on, but not near enough as we're looking here. We just got to be vigilant. I mean, if we can be, really watching and, try to prevent these, the saying is, only you can prevent those wildfires and the like. So, again, I just got to be really, really cognizant here as you're tracking things. Just got to be really, really paying attention here in this type of situation. Let me go ahead and put on our model overlay here. This is a look here at the wind direction around that 11 a.m. point there in the day. And you see the winds going from west to east, and they're going to be pretty gusty here at times. We're talking about gusts that could be over 20 miles an hour even. And that means any type of issue there, any type of little spark can really lead to big problems in a hurry with all the dryness out there, these dry conditions. So got to be really careful here. The wind's going from west to east there as you're looking. So if we have a fire in general, there always can be localized conditions, but in general, we'd have the fire going from west to east here, the smoke going in that general direction. I'll kind of put this into motion here. This is a 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. As we're tracking, you see the greens, some of these oranges, those are getting, stronger gusts in general. The greens are pretty strong, really, with these even sustained winds here, because normally you have more of the blues, or as you're kind of looking, I'll zoom out. Sometimes you don't even have them show up because the winds aren't really strong enough, but we're going to have those winds here pretty gusty around as we're looking. They start to die down later on at night in general, but we really got to be careful, got to be really vigilant here because, we're just going to be drier and drier. We have very little rain in the forecast, and, it's just a serious situation. I know there are criminal penalties, too, for anybody that, does this on purpose. Obviously, it can be very significant, very, justifiable penalties here. Because what can happen, wildfires can be, ones that cause major property damage, and they can even be deadly here. So you really, really, this is a very serious thing. This isn't something, either like a tornado where we have that or hurricane that just happens here, but we have wildfires, and there's got to be some trigger. And sometimes it's lightning, but we don't have that around here. So, a trigger can be, very serious, and obviously there are criminal penalties if that's on purpose, even accidental. There can be penalties as well from law enforcement. There are burn bans in play for most of the area. So we've been worried about this for months, quite honestly, and now it's looking like, as we're going to get here to 80 next week, we're going to have some concerns. Again, this is some serious stuff that we're talking about here. Now, another storyline, we'll get back to the drought here in a moment. Again, it's very significant. But as we look here, you can see these freezing type of readings. I know in Bradford County today, where we're at, Stark Elementary, there are not going to be classes. School's going to be closed today because the heating, the heating system, the heaters are not working right now. There's an issue. So just Stark Elementary. All the other schools will be open in the Bradford County School District on your Friday, but I shared it in my Facebook pages earlier on there, the information from the school district. They put that out Thursday evening. So you can see that there, the Bradford County School District information there, Stark Elementary information. You can look at that more in detail on Facebook there. I shared it on both of those Facebook accounts that I have as we're looking at things here in terms of the weather situation. Again, no classes on Friday because of the heating, the heaters, the heating system, however you want to describe it, not working there at Stark Elementary. Let me get that verbatim here real quick, just as we're looking at the scenario here. Again, we're, just looking, we're just tracking things. The cold air is something when you don't have the heaters working. There's, extra concern. It's, going to be below 40. That's kind of always criteria they had when I was in school. People, really were wanting to be kept inside when it was below 40 in the morning there. But yeah, the storyline is due to mechanical issues causing no heat. Stark Elementary there will be closed on Friday, February 6, 2026. But all the other schools will be open there in the district here. They're going to be in session as normal. I know Stark Elementary, that's of course the one over there. It's, not too far from the middle school, for instance, as we're looking at things. Not the newer school, that's over there as you're going, between 301 and State Road 100 off, down there toward the eastern part of town. This is on the western part of town we're talking about with Stark Elementary. That's the school that's going to be closed. There's not going to be school there on Friday because of the lack of heat and projected cold temperatures here. We're in Bradford, and that's why we're emphasizing that a little bit more than we otherwise would, but the school district put that out there. Due to the lack of heat and projected cold temperatures, there will be no school at Stark Elementary on Friday, February 6th. All other Bradford County schools will be in session as normal. They appreciate your understanding there, and they'll share updates as they become available. So that's the storyline with that. Important for, all those kiddos there and the like, as we're tracking things, as we're looking at things there. Just obviously wanted them to stay warm in this type of situation, and that's why the precautions are being taken there by the school district. Again, here where we're at in the Bradford County area, in the Stark area. So this the geography of that, reminding you guys there one more time about that big announcement. Now, again, we're just tracking these cold temperatures though. As we're looking, we're also looking at the Doppler technology some. And I don't have much on here for a while, but eventually we do have some wintry weather to the north. There's going to be some even colder air coming on in the northeast here. That's a storyline I know out toward areas, in the west. We're going to have a situation where we have the Super Bowl in play and low chance of shower action in the vicinity here as we're looking out there towards Santa Clara on that Friday. In fact, as we kind of zoom on in here, you see some of the different areas here in the Bay Area. You see some of these different spots. And we, know that San Francisco's up here. You saw Berkeley, you saw Oakland. But they actually, play the 49ers, and then they're not in the Super Bowl, but they're going to be hosting that stadium down there in Santa Clara. That's going to be between Seattle and, of course, talking about the New England Patriots there. So again, that's kind of the storyline as we're looking, as we're tracking things with all of that. That Super Bowl is on Sunday here at about 6:30 there, as we're looking out toward California, and that'll be over on NBC. As we're looking at things and as we're tracking things there. I know in general, Santa Clara, it is not too far away, per se from San Jose in terms of that geography there. So we'll go ahead and kind of look at this a little bit more carefully as we give you guys the very latest on all of this. I know you see some of the different spots there in the vicinity. There you go with Santa Clara. And you can see here pretty nice temperatures right now. In terms of that reading, I'll throw it up one more time. In terms of any odd conditions, visibility is at 9 miles, so not quite the full 10, but pretty good overall as we're looking with that. In terms of some of the computer modeling, let's go ahead and take it out to that February 8th there. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things, we're going to go ahead and pull some of that up. And we'll kind of see what we're talking about with some of that. We'll kind of zoom on out a bit. And we do have, I'll change the color table. I have it in winter mode. But let me go ahead and, okay, I guess the model, did it come up? Or is it just showing we're not going to have a whole bunch here? Let me turn the actual radar off here. As we're looking here, it looks like the GFS is not really painting too crazy of a picture, which is great news, obviously. Kind of holding that off here until maybe later on, and more so to the north, as we're giving you guys the very latest. It's a pretty low chance anyway, but it's an outdoor Super Bowl, which we don't always have, so it's important to kind of keep an eye on those weather conditions as we're looking. This isn't showing anything too crazy though, as we're looking out there in toward that area, as we're looking toward that vicinity. Not saying there's a zero chance, but didn't look too bad there on the actual model, in which we like. Temperature wise there, you see these yellows, that's about 67 there at kickoff. So give or take according to the GFS model. So that's kind of the storyline there. That's the Super Bowl on Sunday. The Olympics there, of course, you have that overseas, and all those athletes from Team USA competing. So that's exciting. Opening ceremonies are only about 12 hours away, I guess it is. So that's very exciting, obviously, as we're looking at the 2026 Winter Olympics there, as we're looking at over there, toward areas overseas, as we're looking there toward areas around Milan. So that's kind of the storyline with all of that. Speaking of that area there, I was looking on the map the other day here with all of this, with the Olympics and the like. We're talking about areas there, in Italy with that. And it's just always, exciting to have the Olympics there. And, all those athletes from Team USA competing over there. And the Summer Olympics are a little more popular, I would say, in the U.S. But as you track here, again, looking overseas and the like, it's just always interesting here to have those folks competing. I didn't look at this here in terms of this graphic here tonight ahead of time and zooming in overseas, but to see some of the different geography here. It always gets, kind of interesting looking at the maps here. One of my degrees in geography here, so it's always fun to look, world geography and the like, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things here. Just look at some of these different areas and the like. You have Spain there, and you have areas there toward Italy. As I go ahead and look on in here, you can see, of course, what we're talking about is, Milan area. That's as we're looking there, we're talking about areas there, the northern part there of Italy is what we're talking with this. So let me see right now, some 30s and 40s over there in toward that area. You want winter weather, obviously, with the Winter Olympics, because some of these events, they really, need snow. You have different things there that kind of emphasize the colder weather as we're looking and as we're tracking things. So, just always intriguing to see there on the maps. The like here, I know, looking in that area right now, it's just, we're just early in the morning there. It's just after 7 o'clock. So 6 hours ahead of us, it seems there. That's why the opening ceremony on too, give or take the coverage on NBC. So that's like 7, their time, give or take, as we're looking when that gets going. But, this is kind of your morning type of readings there. As we're looking, as we're tracking, I know we haven't really, here in the Weather Center got right into the Olympic spirit or the Super Bowl spirit, I guess. Jags not being in that Super Bowl, but trying to get into it, I guess. But sunrise is about now over there, so this is some of your readings to show here. The Olympics, their Team USA, try to get it going, and of course out there in San Francisco area, it's going to be Seattle and the New England Patriots for that Super Bowl on Sunday. Both of those events on NBC, so a lot of stuff going on there. As we zoom out, you see all the different readings here, other countries here on the globe. You see some of these, you see all these negative readings there. And then you see there, it's just interesting to see how cold things can get here across the globe, obviously. We don't normally show this hardly ever, but we'll kind of rotate that globe back over here. We stick normally, stateside and local for our 62 counties and the like, but just kind of giving you a little bit of a tour there of that picture. So that's as we're looking at things here around 1:28 a.m. Eastern time. So just always intriguing here, but as we're looking, as we're tracking things, obviously it's just always important to stay on top of things here in toward the Weather Center. So let's go ahead now and, we had that wintry weather the other day, and it was so exciting to see the snow flurries. I know we actually had some of that in North Georgia on that Thursday. That was exciting for some folks there up in North Georgia. Have maybe reported freezing fog right now, which isn't so good around Clayton. Yeah, Claxton. Okay, Claxton there in Evans County. It's north of our area there near I-16, but have some freezing fog being reported there. We don't want to see that. Obviously, that can be dangerous, so got to be careful with that. We also got to watch out. Don't necessarily have it tonight, but general. But if we have fog and smoke mixing, that can cause problems. And we've had issues with the road closure the last couple of days. Interlocking on Wednesday, and it's concerns in Baker County on Thursday. So with this drought, with this wildfire concern, I mean, I could spend the whole program here, the whole update on all of that here. And it's just kind of it's sad to talk about because that's really doesn't get much worse than that, talking about wildfire concerns and drought and the like here. But we really want to talk about some fun stuff. We've had the cold weather, which obviously has been a contributing factor. The drought was between that and not having precip. We haven't had hurricanes, which we don't want hurricanes. We don't have to have them to be, avoiding a drought. But that obviously it can't help. I know the last time we had a big drought was like 2012. Had Debbie, that really helped us in that, but it caused a lot of flooding too. So it's always a give and take here with that. Of course, they've had big drought concerns in Texas, but in the Texas Hill Country, July 4th morning, they had a terrible flood. And, we had all those fatalities out there. So it's just, it's always a give and take. But let's go to a funner topic right now here for a moment and talk about all that snow flurry action I captured there up toward that Waycross area in Ware County on Saturday. And let's go ahead and say that to you guys because that's a lot funner than the drought and all this, not fun stuff we're talking about. On Saturday, I'm on the many places in South Georgia that saw snow flurries for Waycross and Ware County. I was there around 4 p.m. to document them. Temperatures were in the mid-30s, but gusty winds made it feel like the mid-20s. Why not like the extreme conditions seen in the Carolinas? Areas like Gainesville and Rayford reported rare north central Florida flurries. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud reporting with Cloud's Weather. So that was a storyline there with that wintry weather, telling that story, just kind of giving you an idea of how fun that was. But as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things, again, not necessarily seeing that, we're seeing the cold temperatures though here to story. As we give you guys the very latest on the overall situation. Just always intriguing to be on top of all that here. Just, we want to talk about flurries. We don't talk about fires, and sadly, we had some of that on Saturday, the fires too, and not everywhere, not where I was, but part of the area. You have to like wonder, is it flurries or is it, the smoke, and then instead of smoke, we're talking about the ash from the smoke here. Potential for more fire spread with embers even mixed in all that. It's not a good conversation, obviously. So again, I know we also do have something else fun to talk about. FSU softball getting that winner no hitter on that Thursday to start out that 2026 season there in Tallahassee. So, the Joanne Graff Classic starting off well for the Knowles there. Just great to see out that way as we're looking and as we're monitoring all of that. So, now baseball starting off soon as we're looking, that's my favorite there. My mom's favorite softball. So just in terms of those, summer type of sports getting on going for the Knowles and the like. Of course, proud FSU grad here. But, Gators also getting an accent there with softball and baseball. So that's exciting here for our North Central Florida viewers and just, fans of the Gators across the area. And there's fans of FSU like me all across this area as well. Go Knowles. Let's go ahead and we'll throw one up here. Look right now, though, at, again, the not so fun storyline that we have to talk about here. Again, I wish we could talk about all these, sports. I say summer sports. I mean, because, that's really, they're in the, in the postseason, they're in the summer semester, and then like even in the summer semester, they're kind of finishing up that regular season here. As we're tracking their the latest sports you have pretty much, and they have track and field and like, but they're just getting going, and that's exciting. Obviously, I wish we could talk more about that, but instead we're having to talk more about the drought. And here you go. This is probably gonna be, unless we get a whole bunch of rain, and then you might have storms, and then we don't want that. But we gotta get rid of this drought, or we're gonna be on for a while. We had to, we were on for the wildfire threat there, in Flagler County on Wednesday night. I think we're looking better with that. As a last check, obviously we had some of that precip, but we're gonna have more of these concerns because we have an extreme drought here for so many of us. Again, this did not factor in some of that recent rain there. For Tallahassee and the other areas too, but Tallahassee got a little bit more. Maybe they could have ticked down to severe instead of extreme, but I mean everybody in our area is under extreme or severe. It's not a good picture. You see everybody there, Alachua County, pretty much everybody in Bradford, everybody in Union, really. You just see so many of us. Levy County, we had the hurricane, now we have an extreme drought. Dixie County, it's just not a pretty picture here. Even getting downstate, we have this concern. I mean, almost everybody except right where they had all that flooding in October on the edge of a hurricane there. That was, down in, areas there way to the south, with, the accent from Melissa there. They're talking about, all the devastation down there toward Jamaica and the like. And we did have some flooding, in the very outer periphery, some moisture there in Central Florida, and that's where we have more abnormally dry. But everybody else is in, pretty much is in bad shape here. This is not what you want to see. Another graphic I don't really want to have to say, you guys, here, to be quite honest, is talking about evacuating from wildfires. This is something that NOAA put out there. This is from last year. It's for the California fires, but most of this applies for us here. We have to keep these tips in mind. I know, just I'll say it off the top. Have those important documents ready in case you have to evacuate here, because everybody has that concern here, even in South Florida, which I'll see you guys here in a moment as we're tracking things. Just got to really be cognizant of all this. You just got to always stay aware of your environment. This is from those California fires. Much of the information courtesy of CAL FIRE and then NOAA here. This graphic from them, the Weather Service and the like. the different, offices always so in tune to all this, and you just gotta leave when asked by your local emergency officials. Take action immediately when you're told. And, this sometimes can happen so quick. It's not something, it's not like a tornado warning even, or normally it's a situation you get in and you can take action. Sometimes you don't get a warning on your phone or on Facebook or by me. It's gonna be by a firefighter or other officials, knocking on your door saying to get out because they don't have time to put it on Facebook. They just got to get you out, and they're trying to fight the fire with all the resources they have at the moment. They're not worried about posting on Facebook or telling the media here and the like. They're worried about getting you protected and getting the fire out as quick as they can, even hopefully just get it out before it even becomes a case where you have to get out. So, again, just to make sure you leave as soon as evacuation is recommended by fire officials to avoid being caught in fire, smoke, or road congestion, as a delay could cost you your life. As we're looking at that, it's just not good. Take the initiative to stay informed and aware. Listen to your radio, TV alerts there on your phone, another option as well. But, that's something from local law enforcement, or emergency personnel. But again, you got to be very in tune here too. I mean, it's possible you get a call or, there's certain services you can sign up, different counties that, provide some of this. And, this just, you got to be really careful here. You just got to really be, this is very local, even more local. We talk about 62 counties, but we cover, but this is as local as it gets here. I mean, this could be, something right across from your house, in the woods or next to you that could spread. So just, in general, got to cover up to protect against heat and flying embers in these worst case scenarios. Wear long pants, long sleeve shirt, heavy shoes, boots, cap, a face mask, goggles, or glasses. Some of this, it depends on how much time you have, obviously. But ensure your emergency supply kit is in your vehicle, and after evacuation plans that includes the route you'll take and the designated emergency meeting location outside the fire hazard area. So again, we hate talking about this stuff. We don't have the high terrain like they have out there, which in California, where this is, talking about here. That's good at least. It's not like, Gatlinburg, Tennessee either around here, but we still can have problems. We've had problems here. We had problems at 85 in Flagler County. It was, terrible, all the homes that were lost then. In May of 85, on that terrible Friday there, we had fires there in 98. Wasn't quite here in 98. I was in Texas before 2000, growing up for the first few years. But I heard about all those terrible stories from the wildfires there, going back as we're looking at things and as we're tracking all that here. Those Florida wildfires. It was just a terrible, terrible situation there in 1998. It was a firestorm, Florida firestorm from May to July. Lightning was an issue. We got to get rain before May to July. We can't just get these, just pop-ups or, that's going to be a lightning problem too. So just really got to be careful with all this, obviously, as we're tracking. Again, let's tell you that how Georgia's drought monitor. We need to see this because look at how much of South Georgia is under an extreme drought here as well. Severe drought here for a lot of other areas, a little bit less toward parts of, Camden and Glen. It's a moderate drought instead. But yeah, you still got big concerns. As we're looking here, as we're tracking things, most of the state with problems around Atlanta. It's not quite as bad, but in general, a lot of big problems here with the drought. And you got to hope for the best, and got to hope any fires that form, as you obviously have them form, and have still some now that are being monitored. You just got to be trying to put those out. As quick as you can, not necessarily yourself, but calling officials here and just letting them know as quick as possible so that they, are aware and they can get, the fire officials, the forestry officials can get out there as quick as possible to get this taken care of. Obviously mitigation at a time is helpful, but right now they're probably starting to be in a spot where it's less about that and it's more about, day-to-day operations here, unfortunately, about trying to get these out and keep them contained because we have quite a few of them really starting to crop up around here, and it could just get worse and worse unless we get the precip. It's a scary situation if things keep going the way they're going here. We could have some rain to word in the next week. We'll see. It could be more of a severe weather maker to our north than anything in the west, and not even get that much rain here. So we'll see. We need rain around here very, very badly. Here's the rainfall forecast, precip forecast next 7 days. It's still very little. I do have 20% chances at the end of it in mine. Hopefully, we'll, get lucky and at least get a little bit more than this, especially based on what I've seen in some of the models around Tallahassee. But this is from the Weather Prediction Center. They're always saying no rain for the next 7 days for most of us, with the exception of just a little, maybe in southwest toward 100 to, maybe a tenth somewhere. But again, some of the models have shown a little bit more than that around Tallahassee. Around Star Jackson, one Gaineswood is a pretty, not fun picture as we look here. I know as we track things here in February, and I just saw look at the latest modeling right now here to GFS. I've looked at it earlier, but I just want to get the exact numbers just showing, and we're going late for some of that so we can get an idea for the forecast. But for the next, couple weeks all the way to the 21st of February, we don't normally go over this stuff, but because, it's not always, going this far, it's not always the most accurate, but as I look at the GFS here off camera, between now and the end, pretty much the 21st of February, we're talking about start maybe getting about a tenth of an inch, Jacksonville 2/10, Gainesville less than a tenth, Tallahassee about 3/10, Waycross about 3/10, a half an inch there in Albany, Orlando and Tampa, missing literally parts of Tampa, no rain at all. Maybe 1/100th of an inch there, a couple 100ths around the Space Coast. I know they're looking forward to hopefully launching, some astronauts out of there. That had to be postponed some, the big Artemis mission there, but, with some issues they're corrected. But, yeah, the rain picture is not looking good at all here. As we're looking and as we're tracking things, we've got to hope it improves. So we're going to have, increasingly higher concerns. But you have cloudy.com/radar for an interactive look at things here. You can see our covered area. We're always on top of things for the 62 counties, trying to give you the latest information to protect you, your friends, and your family. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch. There, I know. Your Twitter/X at this point. My Twitter/X account there at Cloud Casey. You have cloud.com, the interactive radar as we were alluding to here in the Weather Center, and then go ahead and look here at something that's a lot. I'll go to the 7-day here in a moment, but a lot more important here. Talking about my late dad. He would have turned, and we've already talked about some pretty somber, topics with the weather concern with the drought picture. Now, my late dad there, it would have been his 87th birthday this weekend. He would have turned 87 on Sunday and passed away here a little less than 2 years ago. I miss him every day. Just miss him, all the time here. Wish he was still here, but, just a happy heavenly birthday to him. Passing away there in April of 2024 at the age of 85. As we go ahead and see now that 7-day forecast here, major local drought concerns. Again, many local zones have burn bans in effect, obviously, as we're tracking things. Again, cold here on this Friday. I have 28 here. It's just dark already, but in general, most years aren't going to get that cold. Rural, we're getting, the clearer conditions. We're getting the winds really calm right now. They're not going to be calm during the day, though, and that's a cause for concern. They're going to be gusty there. We're talking about maybe winds of just, as we're tracking things, maybe gusts to 20 to 30 miles an hour on that Friday there as we're looking and as we're tracking things. I know visibility is down to 6 miles, by the way, at Keystone Airport. So that's kind of interesting to see. But yeah, we could have gusts as high as 30 in parts of the area. They're going to be, a situation here where we have the pattern here, west wind. So, west to east will be that flow here as we're looking. If we do have some more fires in play here, obviously that's a concern. Can't be having that. We have some frost concerns too. This is making it even more vulnerable in general here, the overall picture. So, again, a very, very scary one here. I do have 34, by the way, in town. So 6-degree difference between in town and out of town here around Stark and Bradford County. So, we did have one, we did have some rain there as we're looking a little over a tenth, 11/100th of an inch there at the Bradford Weather Stem last 24 hours. So that's about what we had here east of Stark. So not near enough, better than nothing, but it's really not going to keep things at bay much in terms of that wildfire threat. Maybe a little bit. Maybe it can keep, with this wind today, maybe, it's already drawn out, but maybe it can stop something here. And just, obviously you got to be paying attention too. If you see something, say something. If you see something, a fire going, that something doesn't look right, you need to report it to law enforcement immediately because they can get crews out and try to mitigate, per se, in the, real time, the threat here and try to, stop that, because otherwise you could have, it could really get out of hand, could lead to concerns, smoke concerns for people, but even, folks, lives could be in danger and homes could be, caught up in the mix, and they could even catch fire here, which is what we're really concerned about, in general, from the broad sense. Obviously, obviously folks can be, injured or even killed in wildfires, but, it's not quite as dangerous in general. Obviously, things can happen, as people are evacuating or not even aware of a fire coming. But in general, evacuation routes a little easier than maybe California or East Tennessee here, like what we've seen in the years past. But we could still have problems here as we're looking. That's a lot of terrain, a lot of those areas that cause issues with the, it spreads even quicker. But the hillside, fires going down them and the like. But you have a serious situation here. Is we've been doing this since 2019. This is the worst fire concern I've seen, and it's not like we have a bunch of rain in the forecast here. So cold here today, 31 overall. Not everybody at the beach is necessarily going to have a freeze here at the East Coast beaches at least, but you'd already have 28 there toward areas that are around Cross City and Dixie County. So that's the same what we have here east of Stark. So they're now matching up as of this, a 145 or so hour net observation from 135. But barometric pressure at 1,018 here east of Stark, 1,018 millibars. And it's pretty steady, 1,020 there across city. But you see 43 Saturday, then we have a drier front trying to come on through. 33 for Sunday there, a little bit cooler, colder air per se coming in. But, maybe some frost concern here at points as we're looking, as we're tracking, as we give you guys the very latest here and all that. Just trying to keep you guys up to date here on that situation, obviously. Just got to be really aware here. Widespread frost there, early on that Sunday. Super Bowl Sunday, the Super Bowl parties here. The weather looks pretty good, and you see in the Monday it looks even a little bit better in general. 39 Monday morning, 72 in the afternoon there, and 75 by Tuesday. It starts to get warm, and that becomes an issue in and of itself, because as firefighters potentially fight fires, it's going to be, starting to be a little more taxing on them, as they have to, all the equipment they have to wear, obviously, for safety reasons, and then they have to fight the fire that could, it could start to, let's hope it doesn't. I mean, let's hope we get the rain, but it could start to become a big problem here. It could start to spiral very rapidly if we're not careful as we look into war next week. So we really got to be hoping for the best with this. Praying for rain at this point here, folks, because we are way, way, way behind in terms of the rain we need, or we're going to just, see this really become a bigger problem, a bigger story, and having to be on with this a while here if we don't get the rain. But you see here, you see the averages. You see we're going to be above average there early next week with those temperatures. It's so cold here. We had all, 16 east of Stark here. We were looking at my rural area here, start off that work week. And now, next week we're talking about maybe 80 degrees in some spots. So, again, that's a big difference, obviously, as we're looking, as we're giving you guys the very latest on all this. So, that's something to be cognizant about, obviously, as we tell you guys that weather story. So, but cold here on this Friday for the day ahead, as we're looking at all of that. At least we're not going to be 16 degrees, but it's actually going to get, this is not bad weather. It's just I'm afraid there's going to be smoke mixing in here, and things won't be as ideal, for folks to be outside eventually here if things set up the way it's looking like. Unless we're more careful, we're more vigilant here. We're going to have air quality concerns if we're not careful. And but we do have the warmer weather coming here, and that is something a lot of folks want to see. So you see 77 here on Wednesday, 78 on Thursday. Again, warming above average. So that's something. It's going, if we don't have the smoke around and we don't have the fires around, this could be some pretty good beach weather for folks here before the spring breakers really get at it in the month of March. So that's something to look forward to and try to be, happier about here as we're looking, as we're tracking things. So yeah, that's, at least if we don't get those going, if everything, stays under control and we don't have that smoke around as much, it could be some pretty good beach weather here as we're looking at the overall weather picture. So, obviously, still, the beaches and water temperatures could be pretty cool still because of all the cold air we've had. But I'm talking about like walking on the sand and the like there as we're looking. I know a little earlier to know about rip current threats coming up, but that's always something you have to keep in the back of your mind here too. But it's cool, cold for the water, but to walk on the beach is what I'm saying. That's what I do more than anything. But when I'm headed out there to the East Coast and the like. But as we're giving you guys the very latest here, you do see. We're talking about mid 70s, upper 70s. Again, somebody could get the 80 here before, the end of next work week here as we're looking ahead. I mean, it's very, likely somebody will. This is the broad brush of the 62 area, 62 counties in the area, and focusing a little bit more so on Bradford, as kind of the center of this. In terms of the overall weather calculations. But again, just trying to keep you guys up to date. Again, the burn ban's in effect. Bradford County, among many locations, have a burn ban in effect. You are not allowed to burn, and it's for good reason. Sometimes, like, in some places like Duval have the year-round always burn ban in play there for Jacksonville. As we're looking also with the cold this morning, another reminder that Stark Elementary, no classes because of the cold, the heating system not working there. So no classes, Stark Elementary here for your Friday, but all the other schools in the district will have class here. They're scheduled to have class here on this Friday, February 6, 2026. So that's the storyline right there. With all that, again, trying to keep you guys informed, taking that burn ban and the wildfire threat and the drought concern very seriously, obviously, here in toward the weather center. So, again, just gotta hope for the best with that, and we gotta hope we don't have these situations. Sometimes stuff can get out of hand real quick too, and by the time we're really aware of it in media, by the time emergency crews have a chance to put it out on Facebook, they're already have evacuated people, and because the threat's so urgent, so real here, so make sure you're signing up for different local services in these counties. They're generally free here. Not all of them are free. From the local emergency management, Facebook, check their Facebooks, but then there's certain systems, certain counties have systems here that'll notify you of these threats coming in here because it becomes so local and so urgent. It's like down to one or two roads. And sometimes it's more about just easier to tell the people on the phone or by knocking on their door to get them out. Or just, they see in their backyard and they get out even after telling, folks there of the urgent danger here. So it's just, you just got to be very cognizant of this. You just got to be very vigilant. Got to be really, really careful here with this. It's a cause for concern, and you can't let your guard down with this. But this is something that, unlike hurricanes, unlike tornadoes, unlike that lightning here, with those type of threats, is something. It's really all about Mother Nature. But with this, that's not the case here. As we're looking, because sometimes lightning can cause wildfires. Sure, we don't really have that in the forecast, but there's just different local things in your community that can happen, where there's a spark from a vehicle, something wrong with that, cigarette butt being thrown out the window, or somebody doing something really malicious here. This is stuff we can prevent these. We can try our best here as a community not to let these happen. Do not burn is what I would say, especially when the wind is up, whether you have a burn ban or not. Just don't burn today, please. As we're looking here, as we're tracking things, we have burn bans in play for a reason here. The winds are going to be really up here today. You can be held liable, whether it's criminally or civilly, depending on what happens. If you let a fire, get going there, and you're not supposed to be doing that, and then it spreads, we've had stuff like that happen before. So you got to really be, we got to really be vigilant about that. We got to be really careful here. This can become very serious here. As we're looking to get very significant local drought concerns. That's the headline. It's probably going to be the headline for a while here. Just please stay safe with this and stay informed for the very latest, obviously. I'll be back with our next full update late Tuesday, early Wednesday next week. We may have to pop back in sooner, obviously. We have an urgent wildfire, urgent breast fire situation here. That, we can get that information out as quick as we can, by coming on with if we're able to get that data here and all those informational details and about something where we have evacuations. That's what generally is what we'd be on for versus just seeing something on radar. Sometimes you can have control burns. Not sometimes these conditions not as good for them depending on where you are. But the point being is sometimes it can be really helpful to mitigate threats depending on what the local forestry offices decide and the like. But my point is sometimes you see stuff on radar and you get concerned, and then okay, it's just a control burn here as we're looking as we're tracking things. But sometimes it could be a sign of something much more serious, or then you get notifications of evacuations, and then you get you get that concern. We have to jump in here as soon as we get notified. But it's kind of hard to follow 62 different emergency management groups here. But we're trying our best in the Weather Center. It's give or take, because sometimes the city versus county here, cities in charge and counties in charge of other parts of the county, and the like here. But you just stay vigilant here. Obviously, we're going to be watching this carefully. But yeah, you can look at, especially your next few days. Not going to really have that rate on the, on the forecast here at all. So on that radar, you can look for smoke plumes, and then, it's not sometimes if you're a meteorologist or somebody in the weather, you've done it before probably, but you can just look and you can try to figure out based on the wind direction where that fire is, obviously, and then that's something you can stay aware of. But then obviously when we jump in here on the air is when we have more of the evacuation concerns in general, unless something really really seems really concerning here, and it's obvious that there's going to be some folks that are in danger or something. But yeah, this is serious stuff. We're going to keep you updated, but for now, try to enjoy the weekend here, Super Bowl weekend. Then we have next week, next weekend we have Valentine's Day. So just some interesting stuff there with all that exciting stuff for folks out there. And, as we're looking, just try to be as, positive as you can. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, though, with these wildfire concerns. Again, there's burn fans in play for a reason here. When you have any wind up, and you don't burn. Obviously, if you burn ban, don't burn. But I'm talking about there's some areas that don't necessarily have it. Don't do it, really. I mean, I would really recommend against that, whether there's a burn ban or not, especially if the wind is up. If there's a burn ban, you can't do it. That's a crime if you do it here in general here, based on the different, laws and different type of ordinances in play here. Whether there's a civil or criminal crime, you might have to go through all the details, but it's breaking the law if you're, burning when there's a burn ban in place. So that's kind of the storyline here as we're tracking things. For now, have a great night. That's going to wrap it up for now.